A controversial barge that will house hundreds of asylum seekers is not a death trap, a government minister says after fresh safety checks delayed the arrival of its first inhabitants. Cabinet Minister Grant Shapps told reporters there was no reason why the barge wouldn't be absolutely safe. The comments come after firefighters raised concerns over exits and possible overcrowding on the Vivi Stockholm. Asylum seekers are now unlikely to move to the vessel until next week. The barge is a key part of the government's strategy to deter migrants from arriving on Britain's shores in small boats. Our ministers say it will help cut the £6 million a day cost of housing asylum seekers in hotels while claims are processed. It certainly won't be a death trap, Mr. Shapps said. This actual ship was previously used by Germany to house migrants. There's no reason why it wouldn't be absolutely safe. Ships are used to transport people all the time, and there's no inherent reason why that would be the case. That's actually why these final safety checks are being carried out. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak also defended the barge plan and rejected a suggestion it had been a shambles. This is an example of me doing something different that hasn't been tried before to help solve a serious problem. Some 50 migrants were expected to arrive on board the vessel moored at Dorset's Portland Port on Tuesday. However, the Fire Brigade Union (FBU) said it was writing to the government after its members raised serious concerns about potential overcrowding and access to fire exits. Ben Selby, the FBU's Assistant General Secretary, told The Guardian as the only professional voice, firefighters believe the Vivi Stockholm to be a potential death trap. A Home Office source said a late representation from the Health and Safety Executive to check working practices for port staff was the reason for the latest delay, and not fire safety concerns. Transport Minister Richard Holden said on Tuesday he could not put a time frame on when the asylum seekers would start arriving. Groups supporting the asylum seekers, some of whom are staying at hotels in Bournemouth while they wait to be moved, have called on the government to scrap the barge plan altogether. Enver Solomon, Chief Executive of the Refugee Council, said there was no link between making the asylum system harder and stopping people wanting to come here. The reason the government is having to use this barge, and it is absolutely the wrong plan in the wrong place, is because it has grossly mismanaged the asylum system. He mentioned it to BBC Radio 4's Today programme. There is a backlog of 150,000 cases, and if there wasn't that backlog, the government wouldn't have to use ships. Tony Smith, former Director General of UK Border Force, has mentioned the bigger problem for me is the lack of returns or removals. We are not really returning very many people at all, so they know that if they run into a smuggler on the beaches in France, they know they're going to be told, give us €5,000, and you know once you're across, Bob's your uncle, you're home and dry. So really we do need to get removals going. A Home Office spokesman said delivering accommodation on surplus military sites and vessels will provide cheaper and more orderly, suitable accommodation for those arriving in small boats. The Vivi Stockholm is now undergoing final preparations to ensure it complies with all appropriate regulations before the arrival of the first asylum seekers in the coming weeks. Yellow severe weather warnings have been issued over strong winds and thunderstorms forecast in the UK. Gusts could reach over 60 miles per hour in the most exposed parts of the southern England coast, the Met Office said. Heavy showers and thunderstorms are expected in central and southeast England and Wales, with some locations facing 40 millimetres of rain within a few hours. The bad weather is being caused by an unseasonably deep area of low pressure for this time of year. The yellow severe weather warning for wind on Wednesday covering coastal southern England is enforced between 4 AM British Standard Time and 6 PM. The Met Office is warning of travel disruption, trees being damaged and seafront and coastal communities being affected by spray and large waves. It forecasts gusts reaching 50 miles per hour in some English Channel coastal areas, 55 to 60 miles per hour in the most exposed locations in the far southwest, and possibly higher speeds in exposed parts of coastal southern England. In central and southeast England and Wales, there is a yellow severe weather warning for heavy showers and thunderstorms from 9 AM to 8 PM, with the possibility of some flooding. Some damage to buildings from lightning strikes, short-term loss of power and train delays are expected, as well as standing water on roads. Meanwhile, in parts of northeast England, a yellow warning has been issued for heavy rain and is in place from 11 AM to 8 PM. BBC weather meteorologist and presenter Sarah Keith Lucas explained the unseasonably wet and windy weather the UK was experiencing was due to a storm system the French Meteorological Department had named Patricia, which is crossing the UK. She said heavy, thundery downpours are likely for Wales, the Midlands and southern England. These showers may bring large hail and torrential rain, leading to a chance of localised flooding. The winds will be strong in the south, with gusts of up to 60 miles per hour possible in the Bristol Channel and English Channel. Travel disruption and power cuts are possible due to the stormy weather, as well as large waves along the south coast. Elsewhere, she said heavy rain would move eastwards across England, Northern Ireland, Northern England and southern Scotland throughout Wednesday. The RAC has warned motorists to slow down during challenging driving conditions. Rod Dennis, a spokesperson for RAC, said drivers attempting to drive through patches of standing water risk losing control, so the best course of action is to slow down and carefully avoid them whenever possible. As the wind will be especially strong along southern coasts, drivers towing caravans will need to be cautious, while those carrying items on the roof should make sure these are properly secured. Birmingham Airport Airline Jet2 and train companies Avanti West Coast, South Western Railway and Great Western Railway said their services were unaffected by the weather. Whitelink, which runs ferries across the Solent between Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, said their services was running normally. And what about Thursday? Met Office Chief Meteorologist Dan Surrey said the low pressure will pull away eastwards from the UK during Wednesday evening and night, making for a calmer Thursday, although heavy showers could persist. Rishi Sunak has insisted he cares about reaching net zero, but that the 2050 target needs to be achieved in a proportionate and pragmatic way. The Prime Minister has faced criticism from environmental groups and some of his own MPs that he is not committed to tackling climate change. Mr Sunak told LBC he wanted to leave the environment in a better state than we found it for his two daughters, but he added that the UK would still need fossil fuels in the future. Asked if he was confident he could win over his environmentally conscious daughters, Mr Sunak said they were not eco-zealots and, like most people, were open to sensible, practical arguments. He has previously described his daughters as passionate environmentalists who have often asked him what he is doing about climate change. Mr Sunak is facing pressure from some Conservative MPs to review the government's green policies after the party's surprise win in the Uxbridge by-election, when it capitalised on anger over London's ultra-low emission zone, also known as ULEZ. However, he has said the government is committed to reaching a net zero by 2050, which means no longer adding to the total amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, which are increasing global temperatures. Other leading climate campaigners in the Conservative Party have criticised Mr Sunak's commitment to environmental issues. Lord Goldsmith recently resigned from the government, accusing the Prime Minister of apathy over climate change. The Prime Minister has also attracted criticism for the number of domestic flights he has taken to travel for government business across the UK. Earlier this week, he defended flying to Scotland to announce support for a carbon capture project as an efficient use of time for the person running the country. If your approach to climate change is to say that no one should go on holiday, no one should go on a plane, I think you're completely and utterly wrong, he told BBC Good Morning Scotland. In his interview with LBC, he also revealed he was taking his family on a summer holiday to California this week, including a visit to Disneyland. Mr Sunak has announced the government is granting 100 new North Sea oil and gas licences, as well as supporting a carbon capture project in the north-east of Scotland. The decision was criticised by environmental campaigners who said it would send a wrecking ball through the UK's climate commitments. Conservative MP Chris Skidmore said the move was the wrong decision at precisely the wrong time and on the wrong side of history. However, Mr Sunak said, "I 100% believe that what I'm doing is right," adding that even after meeting the 2050 target, the UK would still need fossil fuels. He argued it was sensible to use the energy we have here at home, as this would be better for jobs and avoid the environmental cost of shipping energy from abroad, as well as reducing the UK's reliance on other countries. Meanwhile, Energy Security Secretary Grant Shapps is meeting oil and gas bosses in Downing Street to talk about the government's decision to invest in homegrown energy sources, including renewables and North Sea oil and gas. Mr Sunak is also facing pressure over measures to move towards electric cars. Business Secretary Kemi Badenoch is understood to have raised concerns about rules due to come into effect next year that require car manufacturers to sell a certain proportion of electric models. From Germany, 22% of vehicles sold have to be zero emission, or car makers could be hit with fines. Some manufacturers have been calling for a softening of the rules, and as first reported by the Politico website, Ms Badenoch has passed on their concerns to her cabinet colleagues. But Labour said the sector was crying out for certainty, and Ms Badenoch's comments weigh a threat to investment. Ministers have insisted the government remains committed to banning the sale of new petrol and diesel cars by 2030, despite calls from some Tory MPs for a delay. Thousands of women in Africa will die in pregnancy and childbirth as a result of cuts to the UK's overseas aid budget, ministers have been warned. According to an internal assessment by civil servants, almost 200,000 more women will also face unsafe abortions. Their report reveals the impact of cuts this year to the overseas aid budget. The Foreign Office says its budget for low-income countries has been cut in the short term to hit a savings target, but will then nearly double. The internal document says a 76% cut in aid for Afghanistan will leave some of the world's most vulnerable women and girls without critical services, and 500,000 women and children in Yemen will not receive health care. The document outlines cuts to the department's overseas development assistance budget, worth more than £900 million for this year. The conclusions come in an assessment made by Foreign Office civil servants earlier this year, to inform ministers before they decided what to cut. Andrew Mitchell, the development minister, gave it to the International Development Committee as part of his efforts to make UK aid spending more transparent, as it used to be before the Department for International Development was merged with the more secretive Foreign Office. Previous governments have rarely published such detailed calculations about the impact of their spending reductions. Many of these reductions were imposed on the Foreign Office after the Treasury allowed the Home Office to spend about a quarter of the aid budget housing refugees in Britain. This is allowed under international rules for the first year of a refugee's stay in the UK, but the arrival of so many refugees and asylum seekers in small boats over the Channel has sent the cost of hotel bills soaring, and that has meant less can be spent on the government's priorities overseas. The assessment said that as a result of 76% cuts in aid to Afghanistan, the Foreign Office will not be able to support critical services for women and girls. Reducing funding will potentially leave some of the most vulnerable women and girls in the world without critical services. Across Africa, it said that reductions to the Women's Integrated Sexual Health Programs would reduce protection for women, with the number of unsafe abortions averted from nearly 300,000 to approximately 115,000. The number of maternal deaths averted will drop from 2,531 to just over 1,000. In Yemen, it said that 500,000 women and children in Yemen will not receive healthcare, and fewer preventable deaths will be avoided. It may cause lasting damage to health systems in Yemen if other donors are unable to fund, it said. In Somalia, the Foreign Office will have to delay this year and potentially stop altogether a program to counter female genital mutilation. And in South Sudan, cuts to the humanitarian budget will mean 27,000 children suffering from severe acute malnutrition will go untreated, of which 12% or 3,000 will die. To try to soften the blow of these cuts, the Foreign Office has used in previous years in underspends and other resources to find a little more money to spend on aid this year, including a further £41 million for Afghanistan, £32 million for Yemen, £30 million for Syria, and £30 million for Somalia. And in his letter to the Development Committee, Mr Mitchell emphasised that aid spending would increase next year, with almost double being allocated to Africa. But Labour's Sarah Champion, chair of the International Development Committee, said the impact of the cuts was absolutely horrific. The MP told BBC Radio 4's Today programme that while a Labour government would not immediately restore the foreign aid budget, because it knows that it would be what it would be inheriting, it would prioritise fighting poverty and helping the most marginalised people. The UK has been an incredible leading light in foreign aid. It's given us enormous reach, enormous credibility, and so to continue to throw that away as has been happening is not something we're planning on doing. Asked whether attention should focus on the cost of living crisis and demands on government spending in the UK, she said she understood that, but we're talking 7 pence in £10 that will be going on this. We can either treat causes at source, whether that be because the reason they are fleeing their homes, or we can wait till it gets bigger and bigger and ends up on our shores. And for me, that small investment is definitely worth it. Ian Mitchell, Senior Policy Fellow and Co-Director of Europe at the Centre for Global Development, said the abrupt nature of the budget reduction imposed by Chancellor Jeremy Hunt last year meant that the Foreign Office was unable to protect the poorest or most vulnerable groups, or even stated government priorities like girls' education or climate. Gideon Rabinowitz, Policy and Advocacy Director at BOND, a network for international development organisations, said the report illustrates the devastating impact of continued cuts to the UK aid budget and the urgency of restoring spending so we can meet our international obligations. A spokesperson for the Foreign Office said UK aid spending would rise to £8.3 billion next year, with a focus on dealing with humanitarian crisis, protecting women and girls and supporting vulnerable people, while delivering value for money for taxpayers. While the budget for low-income countries has had to be reduced in the short term to achieve our savings target, it is due to nearly double for these countries the year after, including in Africa, where aid will rise from £646 million to £1.364 billion. A care home has been closed after inspectors discovered it was dirty and understaffed, with the manager admitting people's lives were at risk. 2 inspectors from the Care Quality Commission (CQC) arrived unannounced at Ashley House in Nottingham in May. They found several problems at the home, which cared for 18 people with autism and learning disabilities, and placed it in special measures. It has now been closed by the provider that ran it, W. Scott. The CQC inspectors found mattresses soaked with urine in bedrooms, unclean communal toilets with urine and feces stains, as well as an unclean laundry area and kitchenette. In its reports, the CQC added that there was no housekeeper, with the home unable to maintain cleaning on some days due to understaffing. By officials visited the home on the day of the CQC's inspection, it was found the home had insufficient fire detection equipment and no clear plan to evacuate during a fire. Nottinghamshire Fire and Rescue Service then served an immediate prohibition notice which restricted everyone in the 3-storey building to the ground and basement area only. The CQC's report added the home was not managing medicine safely, and the only person trained to give emergency medication to a resident who suffered seizures lived 40 minutes away. One resident had 124 tablets unaccounted for, while another had a discrepancy of 28 tablets. Radiators were not covered properly, the CQC said, and wardrobes were not fixed to walls. The care home in Devon Drive should also have had 3.5 to 4 staff, but inspectors found only 2 staff were allocated for day and night shifts, and the registered manager who would make sure the home was up to standard was no longer working at the home. The report said the culture of the home was negative. The manager told us the home was not safe and people needed to leave, meaning that there was no drive for improvement or quality of the service. The provider failed to demonstrate any understanding regarding the severity of the concerns, only telling us we are in a bad place and stating the significant environmental factors and fire risks would all be sorted by tonight. They gave us no assurances the provider was able to make the required improvements. Rebecca Bowles, the CQC's Director for People with a Learning Disability and Autistic People, said, "We found signs of a closed culture where people felt they couldn't raise concerns due to management changes, which resulted in no consistency or clear guidelines for staff to follow. It was clear the manager acknowledged the seriousness of our concerns, telling us that they knew people's lives were being put at risk by the provider W. Scott, and that they would prefer people to be moved out of the home to keep them safe. What we found at this inspection was completely unacceptable." A 13-year-old boy has found a shark tooth belonging to a giant prehistoric creature on the Essex coast. Ben discovered the 10cm long or 4-inch tooth at Walton-on-the-Naze during a summer holiday weekend break. The teenager's dad, Jason, said his son was over the moon with the find, adding that he knew the second he saw it was something. Essex Wildlife Trust confirmed it was a megalodon tooth, and intact ones like the one found were a rare find. Jason and his son were on a weekend break from their home in Hemel Hempstead, Hertfordshire, especially to go searching for fossils. They arrived on Friday evening and by Sunday morning had already clocked up 16 miles or 26 kilometres of walking along the coast. They were up at the crack of dawn on Sunday and were down at the beach first thing when Ben found the giant tooth under rocks at about 7 AM British Standard Time. Jason, 50, said, "We could just see the edge of it sticking out and Ben knew straight away it was something and pulled it out of the sand." The pair took their find to Essex Wildlife Trust's Discovery Centre at Walton-on-the-Naze, where they were told it was a megalodon tooth. Jason said he and his son go to Walton-on-the-Naze to go fossil hunting once a year, and also to the Jurassic Coast, a 95-mile or 153-kilometre long stretch of coastline in southern England. He said Ben wants to be a paleontologist when he is older, and the giant tooth was a great addition to his collection. Essex Wildlife Trust said the tooth would be from 20 million years old to 3.6 million. It said several had been found at the Naze, but more commonly they were fragments of the teeth. The cartilaginous fish, whose skeleton is made of cartilage rather than bone, was a carnivore and had no known predators. It could eat anything it liked, but its favourite food was whales, although seals would also have been on the menu. Most of this shark's hunting was in the open sea. Juveniles lived closer to the shore, and it attacked its prey near the surface when it came up for air. Megalodon could swim at high speed in short bursts, so tended to rush its prey from beneath. It would first aim to disable its prey by injuring a flipper or the tail, then once unable to swim properly, the victim would be easier to finish off. Lived from about 20 million years ago, long after the dinosaurs became extinct 65 million years ago. Plaid Cymru's new leader says his party will not promise a timetable for a referendum on independence. Ruin App's Earworth's comments mark a departure from his predecessor, Adam Price, who said he would hold a vote within 5 years if his party won power. You don't have to be fully signed up to independence to support Plaid Cymru. Mr. App Earworth took over in June after Adam Price resigned the month before. The Senedd member for Ynys Mon denied he was watering down the party's message on independence and said the party had to make the case to people moving to Wales from England for a split from the rest of the UK. In his first interview with BBC Wales political editor Gareth Lewis, he said he wanted a reset in how simple his party's message to the public was. Under Mr. Price, who resigned following a damning report on the party's internal culture, Plaid Cymru put independence front and centre of its campaigning. At the last Senedd election in 2021, Mr. Price promised he would stage an independence referendum within 5 years if he became First Minister, but the party came third, falling behind the Welsh Conservatives, and Mr. Price later admitted that independence would take longer than he would have hoped. Mr. Earworth said, "I'm not talking the language of setting the timetable for a referendum. I see very much the road that we're on as being a journey towards independence. There are people who are confidently on it, people like me. There are people who are curious about independence. There are people who, as yet, for whatever reason, and they may be very, very valid reasons, who have decided not to engage or have decided that it's not for them. What I want to do is to have that conversation with them, build trust with them." He added, "I may well say let's have independence tomorrow, but that's not the way it works." The Senedd member said independence did not mean isolation, but about redesigning Britain. "I've got to make independence attractive to people who've moved to Wales from England yesterday, telling them it's not about breaking anything up, it's about building something new." Since November 2021, Plaid and the Welsh Labour government have been in a cooperation agreement which sees them work together on a set of policies, including free school meals. The new party leader has remained committed to the deal, which is due to end after 3 years. After that, and in the run-up to the Senedd election, Mr. Earworth said the party would move to that phase of being absolutely all oppositional, and pointing out why it is that I believe our vision should excite people in Wales more. 100% committed to independence, but not approaching it at 100 miles per hour. Run at Earworth's timetable is a slower burner compared to that promised by Adam Price if he had become First Minister. The new leader's talk of a pragmatic approach to independence rather than a wispy dream is also a change. Mr. Price was once compared to a figure from Welsh mythology who would redeem Wales in her home hour of need. That was not his fault, but the portrayal did not lend himself to pragmatism. If Mr. Earworth is true to his word, then Plaid's Messaging across the board will be simpler for us to understand in the future, suggesting perhaps that it was too complicated or nuanced before. And he acknowledges that many voters are frightened of the idea of an independent Wales. Getting rid of those fears will take some time. Small differences in sleeping habits between work and rest days could lead to unhealthy changes to the bacteria in our guts, as studies suggest. This may be partly a result of people with social jet lag having a slightly poorer diet, the UK researchers found. Heavily disrupted sleep, particularly shift work, is known to have a negative impact on health. Keeping bedtimes and wake times consistent and eating a balanced diet may help reduce our risk of disease. The study of nearly 1,000 adults by King's College London, scientists found that even a 90-minute difference in the midpoint of your night's sleep over the course of a normal week could influence the types of bacteria found in the human gut. Having a wide range of different species of bacteria in your digestive system is really important. Some are better than others, but getting the right mix is key to preventing a number of diseases. Social jet lag can encourage microbiota, species which have unfavourable associations with your health, said Kate Birmingham, study author and senior nutrition scientist at health science company Zoe. Going to sleep and waking up at very different times during the week compared to the weekend is known as having social jet lag. It is thought to affect more than 40% of the UK population, the study suggests, and is most common in teenagers and young adults, then tapers off as we age. Participants in this study in the European Journal of Nutrition had their sleep and blood analysed, stool samples collected and recorded everything they ate in a food questionnaire. Those who had social jet lag, 60%, were more likely to eat a diet laden with potatoes, including crisps, chips and sugary drinks, as well as less fruit and nuts. Previous research showed people with social jet lag ate less fibre than those with more consistent sleeping times. Other studies found social jet lag was linked to weight gain, illness and mental fatigue. Poor quality sleep impacts choices and people crave higher carb or sugary foods, says Dr. Birmingham. An unhealthy diet can then affect levels of specific bacteria in the gut. The researchers found that 3 out of 6 microbiota species which were more plentiful in the guts of the social jet lag group are linked to poor diet quality, obesity and high levels of inflammation and stroke risk. The relationship between sleep, diet and gut bacteria is complicated and there is still a lot more to find out, the research team says. In the meantime, they're advised to keep things consistent if you can over the course of a week. Maintaining a regular sleeping pattern so when we go to bed and when we wake up each day is an easily adjustable lifestyle behaviour we can all do that may impact your health via your gut microbiome for the better, says Dr. Sarah Berry from King's College London. What is a healthy diet? According to the NHS website, it recommends you try to eat at least 5 portions of a variety of fruit and vegetables every day, base meals on higher fibre starchy foods like potatoes, bread, rice or pasta, have some dairy or dairy alternatives and go for lower fat or lower sugar where possible, eat some beans, pulses, fish, eggs, meat and other protein, choose unsaturated oils in spreads and eat them in small amounts, and to drink plenty of fluids, at least 6 to 8 glasses a day. The number of people missing payments on essential household bills like energy, phones and water is as high as it was over the winter, according to consumer group Which. Household budgets have been under strain for more than a year, even though prices rise have eased slightly. Around 2.4 million households missed at least one bill payment in the month to mid-July, Which estimates. Which said that 770,000 failed to make mortgage or rent payments. 1 in 20 renters and 1 in 30 mortgage holders defaulted on a payment, it estimated. January is usually when the highest number of households miss a payment, after paying for seasonal festivities. Last winter, the steep rise in energy prices added extra pressure, but a long squeeze on household budgets is taking its toll on people's ability to make ends meet now, said Which. Its Consumer Insight Tracker, a monthly online poll of around 2,000 respondents, suggests that 8.6% of households missed at least one bill payment in July. In January, it was 8.2%. The figure for missed bill payments had fallen back slightly in May and June, but rose again in July. Around 1.5 million missed payments on household bills, such as energy, water, phone or council tax, Nearly two-thirds of that group missed more than one payment. Others failed to make credit card or loan repayments. Rokio Concha, Director of Policy and Advocacy at Which, said the human cost of the cost of living crisis was continuing to rise. With interest rates predicted to rise again, these pressures on household finances are only set to increase, he said. We'd acknowledge and encourage anyone who's struggling to seek free debt advice and reach out to their bill provider for help, which also called on businesses providing essential services like energy, food and telecoms to do more to support their customers. Less than a fifth of people asked said they thought their household financial situation would get better over the next 12 months, while 4 in 10 or 37% said they thought it would get worse. What can you do if you can't afford your energy bills? You need to check your direct debits. Your monthly payments are based on your estimated energy use for the year. Your supplier can reduce your bill if your actual use is less than the estimation. Pay what you can. If you can't meet your direct debit or quarterly payments, ask your supplier for an able-to-pay plan based on what you can afford, and claim what you're entitled to. Check you are claiming all the benefits you can. The independent Money Helper website has a useful guide. Medical clinics are using fake Google reviews to boost their profiles online, a BBC investigation has found. Consumer groups say fake reviews are a significant and persistent problem and have called on internet firms to do more to remove them and fine companies, which has warned it could be a serious issue if someone chooses a treatment clinic based on reading a fake review. The government said it was toughening the law to protect consumers, while Google said it removed fake reviews. Fake reviews can be bought online and have been known to appear on Amazon, Trustpilot and the App Store. One of the companies the BBC's investigation examined was the Ipswich spine clinic run by Dr. Amit Patel. The clinic had a 4.9 star rating on Google reviews, but their investigation found a number of people who had given this clinic 5 stars on Google had also reviewed 16 of the same businesses in the US, Australia, Austria and Canada for products as diverse as property conveyancing, car repairs and hooker pipes. One of the fake customers wrote, "Dr. Amit was brilliant. He assessed my injury quickly and came up with a treatment plan. I felt that I was in safe hands and highly recommended this place." They also found that 5 people who had rated Ipswich Spine Clinic highly posted negative comments on one of their local competitors. When they were contacted, the clinic Dr. Amit Patel told them he had outsourced his marketing to a company in India and hadn't been aware of the reviews posted on Google. He said since being contacted by the BBC, he had asked for reviews which were not genuine to be taken down. Their investigation also looked at Smiles Better dentistry business in Manchester. One reviewer, Rose Bellamy, wrote, "I'm so happy with my new smile, super fast service and everyone was so helpful and kind." But in the same month, Rose Bellamy had also appeared to review a removal company in Australia, a restaurant in Sweden, an immigration company in Canada, and a spa in the US. A number of its reviewers who had posted 5-star reviews on Google had also reviewed the same pattern of businesses around the world. Smells Better had replied to some of its fake Google reviews, writing thank you messages. The dental firm did not provide a response when they were contacted. Harry Kind from Which said, "I think it's bad enough if you buy a pair of dodgy Bluetooth headphones off a fake review, but if you try and get a medical treatment done and it turns out that the review you chose the establishment on was fake, that could have really serious repercussions. Selling them, buying them and hosting them on your platform should be illegal. They should be facing a fine. There needs to be some deterrent from just buying a load of fake reviews, because for now it's easy to do." A Department of Business and Trade spokesperson said that the government's Digital Markets Completion and Consumers Bill will provide new powers to address this. "We're strengthening the law against fake reviews to protect consumers. We spend an estimated £23 billion a year on items based off online reviews. We will publish a consultation later this year on our proposals, so we are ready to implement these after the bill receives royal assent, including giving the Competition and Markets Authority, CMA, the power to fine these rogue traders." Google said it does remove fake reviews and suspend fake accounts. A spokeswoman said, "Our policies clearly state reviews must be based on real experiences, and when we find policy violations, we take swift action, ranging from content removal to account suspension and even litigation." A large section of the Roman wall found in the City of London has gone on display after spending more than 40 years hidden in a basement. The wall, which was uncovered in 1979 at Roman Wall House, can now be seen alongside other artefacts at the City Wall at Vine Street Museum display. The venue is free to visit and forms part of a redevelopment of the site, which includes student accommodation. The wall was previously tucked away at the bottom of an office building. After acquiring the site in 2016, developers Urbanist worked alongside the City of London Corporation, as well as Historic England and the Museum of London, to incorporate the wall into the design so that it would be visible again. The wall is the centrepiece of a display which also features artefacts lent and curated by the Museum of London from its London collection. These include a tile marked with a cat's paw print, Roman coins and discarded animal bones. All items were recovered from Vine Street or nearby. London's Roman city wall was built around 1,800 years ago when Britain was a Roman province and Londinium was its capital. It was completed between AD 190 and 230. About 3 kilometres or 1.9 miles in length, the wall served as a boundary and a status symbol, proclaiming the wealth and importance of the city. The original Roman wall was between 2 and 3 metres thick, faced with square blocks of Kentish ragstone, a limestone quarried in Kent and filled with rubble and concrete. Characteristic red ceramic bricks strengthened and levelled it. Many years after the end of Roman rule, the wall was rebuilt and marked the limits of the medieval City of London. As centuries passed, London grew and the area around the wall changed. Gradually, it was swallowed up by buildings. The redevelopment of the site includes new student accommodation for postgraduates studying at King's College London and office space. Anthony Melalou, development director at Urbanist, said, "For so long this site sat empty and hid a brilliant historic asset, which we were delighted to help bring to life. It seems very fitting that those studying postgraduate courses at King's College London can live above such a wonderful piece of this city's history." Tom Foxall, regional director at Historic England, said it demonstrated that archaeology and heritage need not be an obstacle to new redevelopments. Finbar Woolley, a director of content at the Museum of London, said, "Like so many Londoners, I have always been fascinated by the rich stories that exist across the capital, around every corner and in unexpected places. This will be a fantastic way for people to stand in the shoes of Roman Londoners and discover more about our history, surrounded by the historic walls of the city." Singer Dua Lipa is facing a multi-million-dollar copyright claim over the use of a recording in her hit single Levitating. The legal action was filed by musician Bokos Kante, who claims the star used a recording made with his talkbox in remixes of the song without permission. The talkbox is a wearable device that makes vocal vibrations sound like musical instruments. Dua Lipa and her label Warner Music Group have yet to respond to the claims. Levitating is one of Dua Lipa's most popular tracks from her 2020 album Future Nostalgia. The legal action, which was filed in Los Angeles on Monday, claims Bosco is entitled to more than $20 million or £15.6 million. It says British Albanian star Dua Lipa had permission to use the talkbox on the original recording, but not on any remixes, Reuters reported. It alleges the 27-year-old reused the work without permission on further releases, including the Blessed Madonna remix, which featured Madonna and Missy Elliott, another remix featuring DaBaby, and a performance by Dua Lipa at the American Music Awards. Bosco is yet to comment publicly on his claim. However, Billboard reports his lawyers say he has made numerous attempts to resolve the matter, which they call a blatant infringement of his copyright. Lawyers maintain Bosco has taken legal action because the singer and her label have shown unwillingness to cooperate or accept responsibility. It is not the first time Dua Lipa, who is currently in the charts with the song Dance the Night Away, has faced copyright claims over Levitating. According to Reuters, a court complaint from reggae group Article Sound System was dismissed in June, and a separate claim by songwriters Sandy Linzer and L. Russell Brown continues. In 2021, she was also sued over claims she put a paparazzi photo of herself on Instagram without permission. Former US President Donald Trump has been charged with plotting to overturn his 2020 election defeat. He is accused of 4 counts, including conspiracy to defraud the US, tampering with a witness, and conspiracy against the rights of citizens. The indictment caps an inquiry into events surrounding the 6th of January 2021 riots at the US Capitol. Mr. Trump, age 77, who is again running for president, denies wrongdoing. On social media, he called the case ridiculous. The Republican politician has already been charged in 2 other cases, with mishandling classified files and falsifying business records to cover up a hush money payment to a porn star. The election investigation has focused on Mr. Trump's actions in the 2-month period between his loss to Joe Biden and the riot in Washington, D.C., where his supporters stormed Congress as lawmakers certified the Democrats' victory. The man leading the inquiry, Special Counsel Jack Smith, said the attack on our nation's capital on January 6, 2021 was an unprecedented assault on the seat of American democracy. As described in the indictment, it was fueled by lies. Mr. Smith wrapped up his brief statement by pledging to seek a speedy trial, while emphasizing that the former president must be assumed innocent until proven guilty. Mr. Trump is due to appear in court on Thursday in Washington, D.C. The 45-page indictment lists 6 unnamed co-conspirators, 4 lawyers, a Justice Department official, and a political consultant. The court document accuses Mr. Trump of a conspiracy to impair, obstruct, and defeat the federal government function through dishonesty, fraud, and deceit. Addressing Mr. Trump's allegations of voter fraud in 2020, prosecutors say these claims were false and the defendant knew that they were false. They also say Mr. Trump tried and failed to convince Vice President Mike Pence to attempt to block Mr. Biden's certification as president on January 6, 2021. As violence ensued, the defendant and co-conspirators exploited the disruption by redoubling efforts to levy false claims of election fraud and convince members of Congress to further delay the certification based on those claims. The indictment also lists the numerous US officials and senior Trump campaigners, workers who, it says, informed the outgoing president that he had lost and that there was no evidence of voter fraud. Mr. Trump, who now faces 78 criminal counts, overall in 3 different cases, is currently the frontrunner in the Republican Party's contest to pick its next presidential candidate. Whoever wins will challenge the Democratic nominee expected to be President Biden in November 2024. These latest charges mean Mr. Trump will have 3 criminal trials to attend in the next 12 to 18 months, complicating his second run for the White House. The BBC's North American editor, Sarah Smith, said these are the most serious charges he has faced so far, but the Trump campaign said in a statement that Tuesday's indictment amounted to election interference. The lawlessness of these persecutions of President Trump and his supporters is reminiscent of Nazi Germany in the 1930s, the former Soviet Union, and other authoritarian dictatorial regimes, said the campaign. It added these un-American witch hunts will fail. His 2024 Republican rivals were quick to respond, while Florida Governor Ron DeSantis said the charges showed the weaponization of the federal government. Mr. Pence said anyone who put themselves over the Constitution should never be president. Democratic leaders in Congress gave a joint statement which said, "This indictment is the most serious and most consequential thus far and will stand as a stark reminder to generations of Americans that no one, including a President of the United States, is above the law." Dozens of top Trump administration officials and advisors were interviewed as part of the investigation, including Mr. Pence and former Trump lawyer Rudy Giuliani. Prosecutors in the state of Georgia are also investigating the former president on similar grounds, focusing on whether he illegally pressured officials there to discard Mr. Biden's poll victory. A decision by prosecutors in Atlanta on whether to indict Mr. Trump is expected this month. Republicans in other states are being investigated for allegedly helping Mr. Trump's push to stop Mr. Biden from taking office. State prosecutors in Michigan charged a former Republican Attorney General candidate and another Trump supporter with tampering with voting machines in an effort to prove that Mr. Trump had lost due to widespread voter fraud. The riot at Congress led to Mr. Trump's second impeachment in the House of Representatives, making him the first US president ever to be impeached twice. Okay, so that's it for the News by Standards today on the 2nd of August 2023. If you want to check out any of the other videos, they'll be linked in the description, or you can check out the channel, as I've got plenty of things for you to sink your teeth into. And make sure to share these videos, it really helps support the channel. Thank you.